Hi, it's Henry again, and I'm going to make a primitive hut out of tubes as a way of talking a little bit about lists in Grasshopper, and also showing you how to do at least one kind of intersection. So here I have three curves, which I'm using as my starting point. And the first thing I'm going to do is get a parameter and set one curve, and that's going to be my ridge line. And what I want to do is I want to divide that up according to the spacing of my tubes. So each of those tubes, I'm going to need to set its diameter. And let's assume that we're going to use 3-inch tubes. And I'm going to divide up that curve, not according to the number of divisions I want, but using the divide distance to divide it every 3 inches. So that gives me a series of points here along my ridge line. Now, I want the first, third, fifth, etc., those points, so half the points, to connect to one side and the other half to connect to the other side. So to do that, I am going to go into the sets, into list, and I'm going to use dispatch. And what dispatch will do is take a list, like my list of points, and based on a pattern, and the default is true, false, it will send true to A and false to B. So A, right, if I highlight that, you can see I'm getting every other point. We'll call those my left points, and B, we'll call those my right points. Now if I had a different pattern, like let's say true, true, false, let me set that to multi-line data, there we go. You would see now I get true, true, false, true, true, false, right? And that's every third point. So it can be anything you want, but what we really want is just every other point to go one set to left, one set to right. So now what we need to do is get the corresponding points on the curves below. So let's set up our parameters. We'll call it right curve and left curve. Set one curve and set one curve. And what I'm going to do for each of these sets of points is I'm going to put a plane along here and use that plane to find the intersection with this curve, kind of like slicing a section. So that way I can ensure that all of my tubes actually line up. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So you can see here, right, this is Y. So if I get a YZ plane for my left points, and I'm going to get a plane parameter to dump that into. I could then come to intersect, which has a whole lot of ways to find the intersection of different types of geometry, and use it to find the intersection between a curve and a plane. So here's my plane, and those are my left points. So I'm going to connect up my left curve. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I want to be able to read that. So let's send it to a parameter. Oops. Right. So you can see that we follow my plane and we get the intersection. So if I want to get a little bit fancy, I could determine the angle that I want my tubes to be at. So I could go back and get an XY plane and use that XY plane, or create a series of them along the left points up here, and use them for my rotation component to actually rotate this XY plane. If I go here and I right click and set that to be degrees, and I need a parameter, I'm going to make a slider that goes from negative 180 to 180. Right, so if I turn off the preview on my XY plane here, you can see that when I move this, now my planes rotate. And I can use that to get my intersections. So let's call this left planes. Right, so you can see that when I change this angle now, it's intersecting a different place along that curve. So this is my left points. Now you can see I get the little sausage links here, and that's because you might be able to intersect a plane. The intersection between a plane and a curve might have multiple points. In this case, there's only one. But what we're getting as our output is not actually 49 points. It's 49 lists of 1 point. So the simplest thing to do is to flatten it. And that says take our 49 lists of 1 point and just flatten it into one list of 49 points. So now what I want to do is I basically want to do the same thing. I want to copy this whole thing, move it down, except I want to connect up my right points and my right curve. And we'll call this my right planes. And this will be my right points. Right? So now you can see, right, when I change my angle over here, what happens. And I could create a line that goes from my left point at the ridge to my left point at the base. Same thing here, a line that goes from my right point at the ridge to my right point at the base. And if I turn off all of these planes, right, and I zoom in, you can see that my lines are kind of interlacing. Now to get the real kind of, I don't know, log cabin effect, what I want to do is I want to extend these lines. So here under curve util, you can say extend curve. And that's my curve. And I need 2 parameters. Let's say one for the top and one for the bottom. I'll set them with a panel maybe. So for the top, let's do 12 inches. And for the bottom, let's do 6. So that line went from the ridge line to the left point. So I think the top extension, that's going to be L1. And the bottom extension is going to be L0. Did I get that right? Nope, I got it backwards. L0, L1. And I'm going to do the same thing for this line. Right, so this is my left center lines. And this is my right center lines. So the last thing that I need to do is to create the tube. And I do that in surface pipe. So that's the center line. And what I want to do is use the diameter over here. And this is my diameter, but this asks for a radius. So what I can do is say expression x divided by 2. And I can just copy this down. Now sometimes when you're creating a system like this, you want it to be able to be a little bit easier to see. So one way to do that is here in display, under preview, you can create a custom preview. And under input, you can get a color swatch. And if you hook that up to the S of your custom preview, you can see that'll override the default colors. And I can copy this. Oops. Copy, paste. I can copy this down. Set it to be a different color. Right, and so now it's a little bit easier to see. And you can see here, when I change my angle, my tubes still stay properly in line. And even if I were to do something like start to curve the base there, the base curve, because I'm calculating where the points are based on my my series of planes, I'm still going to maintain this sort of perfect alignment. So the last thing I want to do is kind of create the bottom piece here. And right here I have my right planes, and they're basically being used with my right curve. But if I take my right curve and instead I use my left planes, if we look here, you can see that I'm now getting the other set of every other point. And if I do the same thing over here where I take my left curve, oops, no, that's what I already have. Take my right curve and I use my left planes. Oops, no. Sorry, that's the same one. That's my left plane's right curve. And what I want is I want left curve. I guess I did have it right. Right planes. Yep. Okay, so now I can see I have every other point here. And if I go and I draw a line now, you can see something weird is happening. And it's weird because I have 49 points on this side, and I have 48 points on this side. So one way of visualizing this is if you look under display, a really useful component called point list. Right? And if I hook up point list, and I give it a list of points, and I give it a size, make it a little easier to see. Oops, actually that's the point list I want, right? You can see that that's 0.0. And what I really want is I really want to get rid of that point and start over here. Fortunately, there's a component that'll do this called shift list. And if we hook up the shift list there and we say we want to shift it by 1, and we turn off wrapping, we set wrapping to false. And if I set my output over here, right? You can see that it basically just shifts my whole list of points over one, shifted it over one this way, and it got rid of that point. And because I didn't wrap it around, I now have, it just popped off the end, and I now have 48 points. So I can now use that shifted list to set up my lines. And now that sets up perfectly. So I can turn off my little preview here. And I think what I want to do is I want to have its own extension. So I'll copy that down. Didn't copy. So annoying. Copy. Select it, copy, paste, there we go. And I'm going to send my line into here. And I'm going to say that I want the same extension on both sides. We'll just call that extension. You can see there, that's my lines at the bottom. And the last thing I want is I want to pipe it and give it its own preview color. Sorry, the software that I use to make the tutorial sometimes kind of messes up the keyboard and makes moving things a little slow and weird. There we go. All right, now if we hook that up, maybe we make it blue. Right, you can see now we've got our own set of sort of perfectly aligned cardboard tubes in a triangle. And even if we change the angle, everything updates. And if we do something even like change the bottom, it's still going to update. And there you have it.